Before we get started, let's talk about Pushkin Plus. Pushkin Plus is a subscription podcast program available on Apple Podcasts. Members will get access to exclusive bonus content, like my weekly bookmarks, where I talk about how I got a book agent and what I'm watching on TV that week. You'll get uninterrupted listening to many of your favorite podcasts, like Revisionist History, Cautionary Tales, and The Happiness Lab. Sign up for Pushkin Plus on the show page in Apple Podcasts or at pushkin.fm.
I just want to move through the world completely honest. I think when you cling to the fake versions of yourself, you deny not only you deny other people of getting to know the real you and loving you for all the amazing things that you actually are.
Gabrielle Union is amazing. She is a businesswoman and a best-selling author who has made her living in the public eye. She's an icon. Gabrielle became a household name when she starred in the TV show Being Mary Jane, which is one of my favorites. And with her star-turned roles in cult films like Bring It On and She's All That, she is unforgettable. But as an author, she shows us a much more vulnerable side than her on-screen characters. Reading her work is like having a conversation with a loving sister. Welcome to Well-Read Black Girl, the literary kickback you didn't even know you needed. I'm your host, Glory Edim. Today, I'm joined by Gabrielle Union. We chat about her lifelong love of reading and how some of her most iconic roles still bring her joy. In her latest memoir, You Got Anything Stronger, we see how she embraced living an open and honest life and how she's used her writing to get closer to the person she has always wanted to be. Thank you again for coming on the podcast. I'm so happy to see you. And I really want to talk to you about the joy of your life and what you found brought you joy when you were writing both of your books.
The process of writing itself, I find so much joy in. A lot of joy and a lot of peace. I'm finding that the older I get, the things that soften my heart, that don't cause those jumps, that roller coaster of emotion that I used to think was fun and entertaining and necessary in order to feel alive. I don't really require that anymore. The parts of me that I don't post on social media probably are the things that bring me the kind of joy that people probably aren't aware of.
I know you're always reading, you're always writing, you have children's books, you have both of your memoirs. How are you staying present? Like, what books kind of still bring you joy and peace?
Well, the one I just finished was called The Prophets.
Yes, such a good book.
We got to get into The Prophets because over the years, as I've been doing my own research for different projects, I'm like, well, where do the LGBTQIA community magically disappear to? During the civil rights movement, during slavery, during every major part of Black history, where does the LGBTQIA community go? We didn't disappear. Right. So to hear about the book, I was like, I gotta get it. And when it finally arrived, it was the best gift I've ever been given. And it took me 6 months to read it because I didn't want it to end. It confirmed what we all knew.
Well, that's the power of narrative, too, because it's like it corrects the record, right? It's like this is why we're so enthralled with the 1619 Project and so many other stories, because it's like we need these stories to correct the record and show that we had so many more experiences that have been left out of history. So, yes, it's fiction, but that was a reality for us that wasn't covered, that wasn't appreciated. And now we have the space to read about it and have dialogue and not leave people out of the conversation.
Yes.
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 One thing that I'm really curious to hear about is your childhood. What books kind of showed up, or what stories did you read that you still remember?
My older sister had an obscene collection of Nancy Drew mysteries. And they weren't really my thing, but because I wanted to connect to my sister so badly, she was it for me. I wanted to be her. So anything that she was into, I was into. Perry Mason, yes, me too.
Your sister was into Perry Mason. That's
yes,
awesome.
I mean, as a child, it's a little odd, but yeah, and Nancy Drew. So I read all of the Nancy Drew books. I read anything Judy Blume has ever written in life. I have read.
Oh my God, I love Judy Blume.
Yeah, those are the pages of my life, of my childhood. That's where I felt most seen for certain chunks of my childhood. I don't share this often, and my mom is like rolling her eyes, I'm sure. They wanted me to skip third grade, and my mom was like, no, we just moved from Omaha to Northern California, and we moved into the top, school district with the highest test scores. And I'm sure they thought they were going to, send this new little black child into the slower track. And I came in and they were like, she's at a reading level that's kind of beyond. And my mom was like, no, I think emotionally she's probably not ready. And then they asked again if I was able to skip the fourth grade. And my mom was like, still no. So I was just always kind of ahead, and certainly with like reading and reading comprehension and all of these things. So my mom was like, maybe she's ready for, some more advanced subject. And it wasn't that she didn't think I would understand it. I think her fear was that I would. And I would understand how our country treats Black people and Black children. Yeah. And I think she was worried about, what does an 8-9-year-old do with that? And then my mom took me to a reading. Nikki Giovanni was reading poetry at the Oakland Children's Museum. And she took me, and I was transfixed. And transported. And then it sort of opened up the world of Black authors and people that look like me, who are writers. What? And I mean, she was the first one I saw in the flesh. She made it all feel possible and real. And when you grow up in predominantly white spaces, you think that some of the things that bring you the most joy are really reserved for white people and white kids. And you're like an interloper. Like a voyeur, if you will. And so seeing Nikki Giovanni and listening to her cadence and how she would turn a phrase, her syntax, I was like, yes, I have found my people. And even just looking around and seeing other kids in the audience that look like me. So it was these trips to Oakland and San Francisco where I was able to just see other Black people and other Black children who liked reading and poetry and writing, and that kind of opened the door. And then Anne Moody was the first author that blew my world open. And Coming of Age in Mississippi was the first kind of older kid book that I read at I think I was in the fourth grade.
It's so wild because I'm a new mom and I'm trying to figure out what to teach my son. But I always remember I went to a conference or I can't even remember. I think it was a reading, but Alice Walker was there. And Alice Walker said that you need to treat young children like humans, like treat them with enough consideration that they can understand complex things. Did you ever write as a child too? Did you see Nikki Giovanni and try to attempt to do your own poems?
Yes. The ones I remember are from high school, and I found them not too long ago. I wrote a lot of bad poetry after Jason Kidd, NBA legend. He was one of my high school boyfriends. And after he broke up with me 3 weeks before junior prom in front of my dad in a gymnasium full of people. It's okay. I'm over it, not. But there was this poem, and it was called You're My Crystal Sextant. And it was you're my crystal sextant leading me to my fate. And then there was one called Little Boys. Little boys like to play childish games from night to day. They think they're old, but to their dismay, they're years from where maturity and manhood lay. What? The bitterness is just dripping.
Wait, how old were you? You was
16 or 17.
Oh my God.
I was a junior. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
oh, the artist, and you started early. I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, it was a book of them. I mean, I was clearly just cranking them out in my misery.
The fact that you remember it, though, it left an impression. It left something on your heart. And I feel bad for Jason Kidd. He should not have done that.
Yeah.
You said in your first book, we're going to need more wine, which I loved. There were a lot of chapters that you wrote that you weren't ready to share. Can you talk about why it's important for you to tell the entire story and why it's so important for folks to hear the truth, whether your experience in Hollywood or your experience with motherhood? Why is that significant for you to be able to tell the whole story and not just pieces of it?
Yeah, I think as I evolve and as I get older and as I triple down on therapy some weeks, I just find it important for me to be as honest as possible. Yeah. If I'm going to be occupying a public space, I don't want to occupy that space as a fraction of me. I don't like to have to remember what lies I've told. Like, I just want to move through the world completely honest. My whole last self has always served me well. And I think when you cling to the fake versions that you have sent out of yourself, you deny not only you of your own truth and peace that comes with living your life out loud and transparently, you deny other people of getting to know the real you and loving you for all the amazing things that you actually are.
In both your books, you talk about like your childhood and your experiences coming to this level of being so open. How did your acting career influence your writing? Because when you read your books, it really does feel like we know you, right? Was that learned somewhere? Was that something like that showed up just because when you're acting, that has to come out on the screen? Did it make it easier to write the book?
What made the book easier to write was therapy. Unfortunately, for a good chunk of my acting career, I didn't know how to access truth, and truth didn't feel safe. And I think it reflected in my work. And then as I embraced radical transparency, I just got more comfortable what living out loud and in truth feels like for me personally. So I'm like, okay, if I can do it as me, Gab, I can find the truth of my character and not be afraid. As artists, as individuals, you want people to like you. Yeah. You want your character to be likable. You have to represent a whole race of people. You want your character to be beyond reproach. But that kind of snatches the truth of the character when you have to pander to respectability politics. So if I couldn't find it in my real life to feel safe enough to exist, I am so firmly committed to assimilating to the white gaze and white fears that I have completely lost myself. You know, your humanity is stripped when you commit to assimilation. And if I have lost myself, how the hell am I going to find it for a character?
Right.
So the more I have worked to free myself and unlearn and to stop centering white fear in all things that I do, and certainly my art, I can now truly become an artist. As a lover of memoirs and biographies, I have benefited from authors revealing themselves so that, as readers, we can see ourselves. The truths collected in those pages, typed out letter by letter, as they were lived moment to moment, build a community of kindred strangers. I owe these writers a debt, and while I can never repay them, I can at least honor them by sharing my own truths here with you. Readers gather the courage to become storytellers, and the lifeline is passed person to person, book by book. The message remains: keep going. Hi, this is Gabrielle Union. You are listening to Well-Read Black Girl.
I'm Glory Edim, and you're listening to Well-Read Black Girl. That was Gabrielle Union, reading from her recent memoir, You Got Anything Stronger? I'm joined by Gabrielle today. I'm really curious to hear how your love of writing and just like art pivoted over into acting. Like, when did you know you wanted to become an actress and really pursue that?
I'm still waiting for that moment. It's because I wasn't in drama club. It was never a thing for me. So I got this internship at a modeling agency. And eventually the man I had been interning for, he was like, well, let's just make up a fake resume and send you in and see how you do. So I was like, how hard could this be? And I booked my first audition. But it was still nothing that I thought like I wanted to do. I didn't want to give up my good job.
Yeah.
You know how we are. And my good job was making $6.16 an hour as the book buyback supervisor at UCLA bookstore. I thought that was going to be the pathway to, my career,
Right.
whatever that was going to be. But then the money, the first year I made more than my parents.
Wow.
And they were like, listen, I think this acting thing is going to work out. I also need a new roof. So for a long time, it was just something I did that was fun. I got to work with cool people, but I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, for years and years until I started taking acting classes with a private acting coach. And I felt like I started to understand the material in a different kind of way. And I challenged myself. And that's when my love affair with acting really took hold.
Everyone knows your role in Bring It On. Did you know it was going to be such this like cultural moment where everyone would be like dressing up as you for Halloween and like copying your ponytail?
So by the time Bring It On came around, I had already done 10 Things I Hate About You, She's All That, Love and Basketball. So they were just like, oh, she's the black of the moment. But by that time, the movie was called Cheer Fever. And it was already set up at Universal and they had arranged a table read. But from all of those actors, the only person that ended up in the movie was me. Cheer Fever wasn't actually the movie I wanted. I wanted Sugar and Spice, the cheerleading robbery movie. That was positioned as the cheerleading movie to have. And I think there were like 12 leads or something. And turns out none of them could be black. So I begrudgingly took Cheer Fever. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, well, at least it's a check. The check will clear, like whatever. So yeah, no, none of us took Bring It On or Cheer Fever because it was like, the movie that we all wanted and we could foresee this legacy. And no, not at all. It was like the movie we took because we didn't get the movies we wanted. But then it was a big deal because black folks came out because it looked like it was, us versus the Toros. And then people saw it and it was like, they're like in a third, maybe. And so it was a conversation and articles and whatnot. And, at the time, but then, it's been 20 years. So when somebody tagged me with it and was like, where were these scenes in the movie? And I was like, time for another story time on TikTok where I explained why after we finished the movie, they had, cut it. They'd shown the footage to test audiences and the test audiences wanted more of the Clovers. So they didn't want to, do reshoots and have to really, truly change major plot points. But they were like, well, we can shoot additional footage that only lives in the trailer in the hopes that audiences would think that the movie was more equal between the Clovers and the Toros. But I think what the main takeaway is, and that you could see it easily in all of the sequels that followed, were the hood teams were always centered in the sequels, whereas we weren't centered in the original.
Because we wanted more Clovers. Hello.
Well, clearly everybody did. And, it's holding to this day. I mean, from day one, it was magic. Like, I'm still close to everyone associated with the movie. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Right. I also love just like the friendships you have. You've had homegirls that you've known since like the third grade and, you guys have grown up together. Can you just talk about the places where you found community and what those spaces mean to you?
Yeah, I've always been very lucky from the beginning of my career that the black and brown folks around me, whether they were in front of the camera or behind the camera, were like, oh, girl, okay, come here. Okay. What you want to do on this next take. And they just weren't interested in watching me fail. And nowadays it seems crazy because so many people are very interested in watching people fail. Like, if you fail, that's a space for me. If the light goes out on you, that means it's shining brighter on me. And that's just not what I faced. Tisha Campbell, Tashina Arnold, they have always pulled my coattails, always put me on game. Regina King, been day one OG, never been interested in watching me fail. But that is who my community has been.
Oh, I love that. It's time for everyone's favorite segment, Rapid Fire. So Rapid Fire is we just say the first thing that comes to your mind, you should say it.
Okay.
So the first one is favorite children's book you like to read with Kavya.
Shady Baby.
Of course. Hello.
Natural.
Pilates or yoga?
Pilates.
Maya Moore or Candace Parker?
Come on.
I know.
I mean, I got to go with Candace. That's my girl.
Do you prefer red or white wine, and why?
I prefer white Chenin Blanc. It's my favorite. D. Wade Cellars has an amazing Chenin Blanc available. It's legit actually now available everywhere. But yeah, I love Chenin Blanc. It's my favorite.
Favorite versus battle so far?
I'm going to go with Miss Patty and Miss Gladys.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one. Even though I felt like it wasn't a battle, I just thought they were just like kicking in.
Yeah.
It was a love fest. It was nice.
Okay,
so either best friend or back to the streets.
Oh, you're my best friend. Yes, no, of course. Best friend.
And that's our rapid fire. Boom, boom, boom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad that they gave me extra time because I could literally talk about books all day long and I don't get the opportunity to talk about books that often. So thank you for allowing me to talk about books and writing and reading.
Gabrielle Union has continued to have strong friendships and fostered a community of fans that support her whole self. Thinking back on Gabrielle's love of reading growing up, I'm happy to see her work join the ranks of her heroes, giving that same comfort to her readers. I'm hoping that this is only the beginning of more stories for Gabrielle to share. After the break, we'll get some book recommendations from one of my favorite bookstores in Los Angeles. Every few episodes, I'll check in with one of my favorite bookstores to see what they're reading and what their staff recommendations are. With Gabrielle Union on the West Coast, I thought it'd be great for you to hear from the LA-based shop Reparations Club.
My name is Jazzy McGilbert, and I'm the founder and owner of Reparations Club in Los Angeles. My mom worked a lot. She was always at work, and she worked on the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, which had a big Barnes & Noble, and so I would go there while she finished the workday after she picked me up from school. The library, bookstores, that's where we hung out. But we never talked about opening a bookstore. I don't think I had any models of even business ownership in my life, so not something I thought was an option for me in life. But she actually didn't know that I was doing that or even had that idea at all. Sitting on my bed right now is Didn't We Almost Have It All, which I have been devouring. I am a Whitney Houston stan, and this is a biography written by Garrett Kennedy about Whitney Houston's life and legacy. And it's also, in some ways, a memoir of Garrett's life too, which I think is a really cool way to tell that story, but how Whitney has impacted us all. And so I'm really obsessed with it.
Hi, my name is Kayla, and a new book I'd like to recommend is Dear Cinderun by Akwaeke Emezi, because it is hands down, in my opinion, the most captivating and creative approach to a memoir. I definitely urge everyone to read this memoir if you're anything like me, and I guess constantly exploring the more heavier, darker narratives.
Hi, my name is Tamika, and the book I'd like to recommend is called Wild Rain by Beverly Jenkins. It's a historical romance. It's so historically accurate, and right smack in the middle of it is a beautiful love story, and I am obsessed. So she's a master. You heard it here first.
Listen to more of these conversations now on our Bookmark series, exclusively on Pushkin Plus. We can all learn something from Gabrielle's journey. I mean, Gabrielle Union moves through the world with such honesty. She encourages her readers to take risks, make mistakes, and most importantly, support each other. Be sure to get a copy of You Got Anything Stronger if you haven't yet. In the next episode, I'll be speaking with Brooklyn-based author and culture critic Zeba Play. Well-Read Black Girl is a production of Pushkin Industries. It is written and hosted by me, Glory Edim, and produced by Cher Vincent and Brittany Brown. Our associate editor is Keishel Williams. Our engineer is Amanda K. Wang, and our showrunner is Sasha Matthias. Our executive producers are Mia Lobel and Lital Molad. At Pushkin, thanks to Heather Fain, Carly Migliori, Jason Gambrell, Julia Barton, Jen Guerra, John Schnars, and Jacob Weisberg. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Well-Read Black Girl. You can find Pushkin on all social media platforms at Pushkin Pods, and you can sign up for our newsletter at pushkin.fm. If you love this show and others from Pushkin Industries, consider subscribing to Pushkin Plus. Pushkin Plus is a podcast subscription that offers bonus content and uninterrupted listening for $4.99 a month. Look for Pushkin Plus on Apple Podcast subscriptions. And if you're already a subscriber, make sure to check out my exclusive bookmark series on Pushkin Plus, starting on February 18th. You'll hear extended interviews with book club members, bookstore owners, and more. And you get to hear what's on my mind, what's on my radar, and of course, what's on my reading list each week. To find more Pushkin podcasts, listen on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen.